Namu Horen Gekyo Namu Horen Gekyo. This is the mantra that I recite every day. This means to take refuge in the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wanderer's Dharma, or simply to mean to take refuge in the Lotus Sutra. Taking refuge is a Buddhist phrase whose most famous usage is to take refuge in three treasures of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Then what does taking refuge in the Lotus Sutra, in one of the Buddhist scriptures, mean? Why is doing so important to nurture your spiritual life? How is that related to you? That's what I want to talk about this morning. So the Lotus Sutra is one of the most popular Buddhist scriptures in East Asia, and today in the US and beyond as well. There are several English translations available. It was supposedly composed roughly after 500 years after the death of Shakyamuni Buddha. The Lotus Sutra is a story of the historical Buddhist Shakyamuni responding to questions and concerns of the disciples and transformed these disciples into bodhisattvas. Bodhisattva is a Sanskrit word that means enlightened beings who made a vow to become a Buddha by choosing to undergo millions and millions of cycles of rebirth in order to respond to the suffering of all living beings and help them achieve enlightenment. In the Lotus Sutra, the audience of the Buddha includes bodhisattvas and those who are not yet bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas were kind of looking down on other disciples, and these lower ranked disciples are kind of jealous of these bodhisattvas. A highlight of the Lotus Sutra is to say that everyone in the Lotus Sutra assembly is a bodhisattva. The distinction between bodhisattvas and non-bodhisattvas was provisionally made as a Buddha's skillful means for the sake of clarity of his teachings. So everyone is a bodhisattva. This means that everyone will become a Buddha. This is the Lotus Sutra's enormous claim of the universal Buddhahood. And the Sutra wants you to know that you, as a reader or student of the Lotus Sutra, will also become a Buddha. But when you hear the word, everyone will become a Buddha, you may go, wait a minute. I have this and that attachment, so how come will I become a Buddha? I'm too far from it. How about that neighbor, that supervisor, that difficult person around me? They're all mean to me. How can they become a Buddha? So how does the Lotus Sutra respond to such questions? In order to consider that, let's take a look at the story from the Lotus Sutra. So at the outset of the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha Shakyamuni enters meditation, and then auspicious flowers rain down from the sky, and the earth trembles. And then all of a sudden, the Buddha, from the tuft of white hair between his eyebrows, sends forth a ray of light, illuminating 18,000 different worlds, leaving no place unlit. From the depths of Avijja hell to the upper reaches of Akanishta heaven. Wondering about this, Bodhisattva Maitreya asks Bodhisattva Manjushri, about this enigmatic matter. Hearing Maitreya's question, Manjushri answers that this is a sign that the great Dharma is going to be preached soon by the Buddha, as a very similar incident happened in the distant past. Manjushri then gives an example from the billions and billions of years ago when there was another Buddha whose name was Light of the Sun and the Moon. In that ancient past, when the Buddha entered meditation, flowers also rained down from the sky, rejoicing all audience. Then he emitted a ray of light, illuminating 18,000 Buddha lands. In that distant past, among the assembly was a Bodhisattva wondrous light. The Buddha, Light of the Sun and the Moon, preached the Lotus Sutra to that Bodhisattva, and then this Bodhisattva expounded the Lotus Sutra to people for billions and billions of years. Bodhisattva Wondrous Light had a disciple who is famous for fame seeking. He was called Fame Seeker. Fame Seeker. As the sutra says, even in reading and reciting many sutras, he could gain no fluency in them and could not remember much. So he became known as Fame Seeker. However, this disciple eventually learned and practiced the Buddha's teachings many years, and then he was able to grow so much and see billions of Buddhas in the end. This story is really interesting to me, because who is Maitreya? Well, in Buddhism, Maitreya, Bodhisattva Maitreya, is known as a next Buddha. So the tradition says that the Maitreya will become a Buddha roughly 6 billion years from now, and now the Lotus Sutra says that this future Buddha's one of past lives was a fame seeker who underwent both a greedy fame-seeking life and a struggle with remembering what he learned. Can you imagine that a Buddha's past life was fame-seeker? So what's the point of this? Here in the Lotus Sutra, you see that great Bodhisattva Maitreya was like all of us. We can relate to that person. So in the Lotus Sutra, Buddhahood affirms and embraces both Buddha-like quality and non-Buddha-like quality within you. So in the Lotus Sutra, Buddhahood does not mean an exclusion of our delusions and attachments. Rather, the Buddhahood means a mastery of all delusions. So nirvana is a full comprehension of delusions and attachments. So for example, if you have a problem with anger, the suggestion made here is that, well, don't try to eliminate it. Rather, understand it more and master it, because your struggles to cope with your anger by developing a better relationship with it are the seeds of your Buddhahood. I hope this is very encouraging for all of us. In our lives, there are things we don't like about ourselves, but the key is not to kick them out, but rather to understand things we don't like about ourselves so that we can fully embrace and appreciate who you are in this moment. That's how our suffering is overcome according to the Lotus Sutra. Well, this sounds great, but how can we practice in our everyday life? Let's take a pause here for 30 seconds or so before I offer a practical story of accepting things I don't like about myself. Okay, what does it mean to master things we don't like about ourselves? So, as a native Japanese, I came to the US for the first time when I was 23 years old to study at Meadville Lombard Theological School, a UU seminary in Chicago. I had a wonderful experience. When I was in Japan, I was an English language major at a local university and hence thought I was fluent in the language because I was much more fluent than other Japanese people around me back then. However, this confidence somehow grew into my arrogance and arrogance and boastfulness, so leading to misunderstanding myself, and I believe that I was really fluent in English. But I never tested this ability, my English, before any native English speakers. So coming to the US with this helplessly devastating arrogance was a big mistake. For instance, when a cashier person at a local grocery store said to me, "Hi, did you find everything okay?" You do this in the US, right? That was so foreign to me. I'm not your friend. Why are you speaking to me? Right? So I was caught by surprise because it was too far from me, my culture. But what was even more problematic was that I could not catch what that cashier said to me. So I did not hear this as, "Hi, did you find everything okay?" Rather, it sounded to me something like, "Heidi, you are fired. A, B, Jesus, or Kate?" I was really confused. I'm not Heidi. I'm not Kate. Am I fired? And the second day of my United States coming here? I'm not a follower of Jesus. I have a lot of Christian friends, but I'm a Buddhist. Heidi, you are fired. A, B, Jesus, or Kate. I never forget this. So filled with confusions like this, my first year in the US was tough because of the linguistic limitations. However, I started to wonder if that was really the linguistic challenge that was causing these difficult situations. Then I started to think of my situation by applying this to the Buddhist teaching of the Four Noble Truths, to investigate what exactly I'm suffering from, to get to know about what the cause of this suffering. And then, out of my surprise, I discovered that the cause of my stress and suffering was not really my linguistic limitation itself, but rather, I suffered from the gap of my identity. There's a gap between an illusion of being a fluent English speaker and the reality of not being fluent. In other words, I did not want to accept the fact that my English was not good enough to get by in the US. I was not strong enough to accept my reality. Because if I accepted that reality, that would have meant the collapse of my identity as a good English speaker. So I resented it. I tried to defend my identity, my attachment, because I was afraid of losing my identity that I clung to for many years. Because of my arrogance and fear, I could not accept that I did not understand English. So I pretended that I did. That was excruciatingly tiring. Like, can you imagine going to a party every week, not understanding jokes made there, and pretending that it was funny for you for a year or so? That was tiring and draining. But I could not still accept that I was someone who could not understand English. But where was the problem? Where was the problem? Was it in the party and people were over there? No. The cause of my suffering was in my mind. So I suffered from my attachment. This means that things that I should change is not outside me. It was not my environment. In this case, what I needed to change was nothing other than myself. A couple years later, I finally admitted myself as a non-fluent English speaker. That was liberating. It was from that time on when I became less stressed out and started to enjoy my learning of English in the US. When I could not understand the words of a cashier, I asked what was stated and sometimes asked some questions about the usages of English words and so on. So at a barbershop, I learned some jokes from a stylist. As soon as I accepted my attachment and embraced the reality of being a non-fluent English speaker, my English then made a rapid growth. Paradoxically, so the real path towards fluency was finally opened up by way of fully embracing and understanding my non-fluency. That was a moment when I realized the nonsense of my self-discrimination against a particular aspect of my identity. With that awareness attained, as a result of practicing Buddhist teachings, I finally started to embrace my difficult reality as it was. I no longer denied myself and my past. Those miserable days would never change forever. I cannot change what happened to me in the past. However, I can change the meaning of what happened in the past. Now I see tough days were important for me to understand myself better and attain skills to reach out to people who are perhaps struggling with similar situations. So the meaning of my difficult past was transformed, while the difficult past as an event remains the same. That's how I was able to embrace my difficult past according to the Buddhist wisdom of the Lotus Sutra. With this experience, what I can offer is to create a sense of community for similar-minded folks, to listen to their stories and feelings, and to be with them until a breakthrough moment comes to them. Because ultimately, the only person who can solve their problem is no one other than themselves. Like the story of the fame seeker, my attachment to my old identity was a seed of my Buddhahood. What kind of seed of Buddhahood do you have already within yourself? Before you go home, please let me know, or send that in a Zoom chat.